with this presentation. So what the idea of the talk today is simply to discuss three main aspects related to potential trends and of technology, media, and journalism. And in order to do that, I'm going to go through three main topics that somehow relate to research that have been undergoing at the University of Liverpool and also the Italian Digital Media Observatory. And the main, the core theme is that of decision making, right? So what's the connection between news making and decision making in the digital age? If we can change slide. Thank you. So you probably remember the idiom, all the news that's fit to tweet, right? That was sort of a buzz idiom or, a buzz phrase already a few years ago. But right now, actually, what instead we are hearing a lot about is this phenomenon of hashtagging. And what's hashtagging? Well, it's basically leveraging and using an hashtag that is used by one group in order to make your own news or your own communications like popular, even though with a different meaning. And it's a phenomenon that that actually was started with the so-called like Proud Boys in the unfortunate like Trump's times. And then it's something though that it's used not necessarily for good reasons, but it's also used by groups of disinformators. But what's hashtag and why hashtags are important? Why I'm even talking and introducing the concept of what an hashtag is. We are all familiar with hashtags. Well, because I think that right now and today for journalists, journalists have to pay a lot of attention to hashtag. And why so? Because an hashtag is a metadata tag that is prefaced by a hash, right? And we all know that. And they are using microblogging and photo sharing across like Twitter, Instagram, and so on and so forth. And basically, they allow you to cross-reference content. And this means that looking for an hashtag, of course, you can have access to various types of information. So writing the right hashtag on your, as you all know, as all you practitioners know, on your news could make like your news particularly popular. So originally hashtags were called actually channel tags. And you would in 2007, which feels like really long ago if you read like the users comments that were discovering hashtags, but actually it's not that long ago. Hashtags were considered quite a good idea, and you would read comments that would say, well, I'd still like to see more tag-like context too. And why so? Well, because it would make users' life easier in a way when it came to being able to retrieve information that they are really interested in. But with innovation, as always, as we were saying, like perils are there too. So if you hashtag an hashtag, then you can reach out a very wide audience and spread misinformation and disinformation. Sorry, can we change slide? And next slide. Thank you. And so what? No, it just sorry. I think there's a slight delay. So when it comes to the the outline of this talk, it was like this slide just before, 2 slides before. So I'd like to talk a little bit about a project that the Italian Digital Media Observatory is working on together with like Luminate and Water on Mars. And it is about the Italian snap elections. So as you probably know, Italy is facing general elections on the 25th of September. After, actually, if we can go back to the slide before, because there were like other 2 slides before. Sorry. And Yeah, that's also fine. Okay, great. And then the second project that I'd like to introduce is about natural language generation and GPT-3 and the potential role of GPT-3 for journalism. And finally, I'd like to touch upon a new research project that is focused on fact checking and building argument technology for impartial fact checking, and it's a project that will kickstart very soon in 2 months, and it's actually highly relevant for journalists. So, start providing a brief overview of the Italian elections and media literacy project. That's the way I would call it. Yeah, next slide. So, as you probably know, after the resignation of the Prime Minister Mario Draghi on the 21st of July, we will have snap general elections very soon. Why are these elections? Well, in a way, very important from a digital perspective, because these are the first elections happening after the Digital Service Act has been ratified by the Council of the European Union. And this, of course, raises loads of questions. What is the role played by digital and social media in propaganda campaigns? What effect do algorithmic recommendation systems of different social media platforms have on spreading political agendas? And what is the role played by communities of fake news spreaders in shaping public opinion? So these are all, of course, million-dollar questions, but definitely, next slide, please. Definitely, through the help of like Luminate and Water Mars, we are implementing computational social science methodologies to try to navigate these infospheres and also its relation to propaganda. And in particular, we're working with social network analysis as well as natural language processing one. Of course, data collection plays an important aspect. And right now, thanks to APIs, so application programming interface, there's the possibility to collect wide range of data from Facebook, from Instagram, from TikTok, from YouTube, and from Twitter. Next slide, please. And through this analysis, what popped out, and then I will show some interim like results as quite relevant, is that in a way, having a voice or not having a voice on different social medias for different parties will most likely have an impact on at least on the communication campaign and propaganda campaign. So as you probably know, Agicom, which is like the communication agency, official communication agency in Italy, implemented this so-called par condicio law, which has like guidelines to improve self-regulation of political propaganda. So originally, this law is meant to give the same amount of voice, like somehow, on like TV channels and radio channels to different political parties. But there's not a regulation in place right now when it comes to in the digital media and the online world. So yeah, this equal treatment, as I was saying, is active on traditional means, but not applicable to the internet. And this is potentially an issue. And what everybody's advocating is for online platforms to make sure that all political actors enjoy same access to communication means. But what does this mean in practice if actually there's not like a law that that is able to enforce it somehow? Then there are regulations when it comes to political propaganda's transparency on ads. And also there's a ban on disseminating polls results and online polls up to 15 days before the elections. And of course, there's this so-called electoral silence, so the fact that political propaganda is forbidden on election day and the day before. And also enhancement of fact-checking methods. So this program seems a great one, and it would definitely be helpful to have all this situation into place. But clearly, the digital environment creates various challenges in this respect. Next slide, please. And so looking at the data, these are just like some snapshots. you'll see very clearly that there are different voices on different platforms, which actually means that different parties have different number of accounts on different platforms, and also, of course, their behavior on different platforms in terms of frequency of posting and also amount of like users and followers and so on and so forth might really affect the propaganda campaigns and how like users and citizens are informed. So on Twitter, for example, like the Lega, the political party like Lega clearly like leads in terms of like number of tweets. And then we were also like able to trace back how many tweets are published like every day across various like spans of time. And this allows you to understand, oh, okay, like that day is a very hot day in terms of tweeting. Why is that so? And why is one political party tweeting more than another one, for example? Next slide, please. But then on YouTube, which is different social media platform, this situation is more complex in a way, because not every political party is represented, and also there are like average views count per parties, which actually do not cross-cut, or they're not the same as average comments count per party, right? So, for example, you do have a lot of views for, again, the Lega party, but actually when the parties which is center right, it actually gets more comments, so which means that there's more active engagement on the part of the users. And then, of course, there's also the possibility and the chance to see what are like the main words, so the words that are more frequently used in titles on YouTube videos, and also in the very like text of the video too. Next slide, please. And also, like the average likes per party, they do change quite a bit. And so when it comes to the likes, for example, the 5-star movement seems to be the luckiest one. Next slide, please. And then, of course, there was a big issue that popped up like recently when it came to TikTok, because certain parties were already on TikTok since like 2019. And instead, like I think like 2 weeks ago, basically, on 1st of September, then we had some candidates, some politicians that decided to join like TikTok, and this was like very controversial. And there were like users like praising this choice in order like to involve like the younger generations, and others instead like criticizing the way they were communicating on TikTok, because of course there's also a specific code, communication code, that has to be used in order for different social media channels to be effective, like for real. Next slide, please. And then we also had like the opportunity to look at comments related and focusing on polls. So what are the results of the polls? Of course, always have a big impact on the decision making choices for voters, and we know that from American elections when Trump was elected. And it seems that actually right political parties, and more specifically La Lega, were talking a lot or boasting a lot about the results of the polls. But actually, any of these comments is already forbidden right now, and it will be for the next like 2 weeks. Next slide, please. Last but not like least, another a challenging aspect that journalists have to face, and not only like journalists but also social media users, is actually the multimodal nature of communication right now. And so when I started like working on this project, I just like realized that that basically I didn't know what this emoji with the break would mean. And actually looking then at the comments and talking with the researcher at Water on Mars, I learned that actually these emojis is generally used by alt-right groups to identify themselves and then like to bring and to develop like networks, also to spread misinformation, for example. So there's also all these multimodal aspects that need to be taken into account. And then next slide, please. I would probably jump over to number 16 in the interest of time. And when it comes to the other challenges, of course, another big challenge is constituted by hate speech. There's a lot of hate speech that we could see online, despite actually going against Twitter policies. And finally, there's also another big issue, which is the analysis of anomalous distributions of bots, or anyways, like accounts that seem to have a behavior which is a non-human one, and actually constitute main actors to spread disinformation and misinformation. And Dr. Lorenzo Federico at Data Lab is working on new methodologies to make these bots emerge. So quickly, I'd like to just go through the challenges and also the opportunities that can be brought about by GPT-3 and the so-called GPT-3 revolution. Next slide. And so you probably know what GPT-3 is. So it's a new pre-trained language model for language generation that has been released by OpenAI. And it is a revolution for the computational world and the digital world, like simply because right now, through an open access tool, you can automatically create like text that is very much like human-like, and you can do that with few shots learning. So which means that you don't basically need annotated training data to build and to develop your machine learning systems. And of course, GPT-3 has a plethora of applications, from language translations to generation of articles, codes, and works of art, which also means, though, that you can definitely automatically generate like news. Next slide, please. And so this is the OpenAPI like playground, and you can see that writing prompts through this playground is kind of like easy. And what's also sort of yeah, sorry, one second. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. What's also like sort of really interesting is that you can even create propaganda, short propaganda messages through GPT-3, and it's something that we are working on at the University of Liverpool. And next slide, you can, for example, like see how asking GPT-3 to write a piece of propaganda as if you were Giorgia Meloni or Matteo Renzi, you get pieces of text that somehow could definitely be authentic. Next slide, please. So finally, and sorry, since I've been talking for far too long, but I just wanted to introduce our upcoming project funded by the European Media and Information Fund, which is entitled Leveraging Argument Technology for Impartial Fact-Checking, together with University of Dundee, and of course having like Luis as a main leader. And in the last slide, next slide, I'd like to introduce our research questions. So the main topic of the research project is that of giving journalists the tools to develop impartial fact-checking, because of course, fact-checking is a very complex task, also from a cognitive point of view. And so it is really important and it is currently unexplored to understand what are journalists and communication gatekeepers' cognitive biases while choosing what news to fact check, and while also deciding what type of data needs to be fact checked and what not. So first of all, we're going to ask, what does impartiality mean for the fact checking process? We're going to identify cognitive biases that affect fact checkers in the selection of news and in the verification process. and also develop structural techniques to adapt to help the bias fact checking, and implement a digital tool in order to spread out this this tool to help journalists in their decision making processes. Since fact checking right now is a matter of decision making, but also being readers and users, being citizens that have to navigate the information ecosystem, is also a matter of decision making, because we have to go through and select like news among like a wilderness of content out there. Thanks.